To talk about this story and a few of the other big stories of the day, eminent climatologist Theo Usherwood is with us. I nearly said geologist, of course, that'd be a schoolboy error.
Yeah.
I should have said political commentator, of course. Theo, lots to get through here, including, of course, this whole... It's a bit of a mysterious department to me, this kind of department for... Is it just called Department for Net Zero now?
Yes, Net Zero Climate Change, yes.
Yes. It kind of sort of exists with almost like an autonomous part of government.
The fiefdom of
yes, it doesn't feel like,
Miliband.
there's the Department of Defence, there's the NHS, there's education over there, and they're all in this sort of half square mile of Westminster, and then there's this sort of little curious cartel of characters, Ed and team.
Yes, and the reason that it exists, and the reason that it exists in the way that it does, is that Keir Starmer has this mission, and we knew that this was, quote unquote mission-led government, to get to net zero by 2050, and that's why he's brought in Ed Miliband, obviously a former leader of the Labour Party, but somebody who really believes this stuff. If you want to get it done, then you can't put in anybody who's half-hearted about it. Keir Starmer has gone for an Ed Miliband, a Secretary of State, who really wants to hit net zero. He's not going to allow anything to get in his way, and that's Ed Miliband has been very open about the fact that he wants to hit net zero, and he's prepared. He had concerns and whether he steps aside on that third runway at Heathrow Airport. He's not going to equivocate. He's not going to allow anybody else to tell him what to do or where to go with it.
But that's where it goes out the window, Theo, isn't it? Because you can't be kind of Mr. Net Zero and then go, but I'm going to endorse another runway at the airport. I mean that, and then there's a few other things. The oil field issue that is still up and running, and there was something else that happened in the last couple of weeks that also there was a sort of triple of issues. You think, well, hang on, if you're Ed Miliband, you would surely resign at this point.
Yes, well, he's not resigning, and that goes. You speak to the heart of the nature, the paradoxical nature of this government, is that, as you say, on the one hand, you got Heidi Alexander last night telling airline chiefs that she wants a second runway at Gatwick Airport. Then on the other hand, you've got this report out which is saying that there needs to be a frequent flyer tax to curb air travel. Which way is it going? And there's a real danger now that Keir Starmer's government lacks direction, that people become confused. Correct. Is the person to win out Rachel Reeves as she goes for economic growth, to get put rocket boosters under the economy so that we all feel better off by the time of the next election and think, well, actually, is Keir Starmer such a bad Prime Minister after all, and perhaps some of his voters might think, well, we could vote Labour again? Or do we actually, Labour, very conscious of the pressure from the left, from the Green voters, from the young environmentalists who think that actually...
All 7 of them.
Yeah, but that's why he's adopting this. It's about losing votes to the left. The Liberal Democrats, yes, there's that, but they're more focused. That the success of the last election was actually winning over Conservative voters in places like Maidenhead and Henley. The ones he's worried about are the younger voters. This is Keir Starmer, and of course those on the left of the party who think that actually Labour no longer represents the environmental cause.
Yesterday, of course, we got the news that energy bills were going up. Ed blamed, a mix really, dictators, cold weather and petrostates for rising prices. Let's have a listen to Ed Miliband on this very specific point of energy bills.
What's government going to do? We're going to have your back. We're going to expand the warm homes discount to protect vulnerable families. We're going to insulate and have energy efficiency for more homes. And we're going to ensure that the regulator is really tough with those companies so we get best value for money for consumers. And the truth is, the most important thing we can do is stick to our clean power mission. Homegrown, clean power that we control. Solar, wind, nuclear. That's the way we get off the roller coaster of fossil fuel prices. That's the way we take back control of our energy security. That's the government's mission for our country.
So that's what he says. Oh, that was the third one, nuclear, which I know that doesn't strictly go...
SMRs, small reactors.
The small reactors. I know that doesn't strictly go against the green agenda as such, although there are some environmentalists that think this is an outrageous idea. I don't think that was ever initially part and parcel, the nuclear bit.
Well, it came into being because, of course, there's this drive to try and this is on the economic argument, right? Yeah. This drive to try and bring in data banks for AI, so that, you know, Keir Starmer wants this country to be a hub for artificial intelligence. In order to have artificial intelligence, you need to create these data banks, you know, data centres, which use a huge amount of energy, and therefore you cannot position them too far away from the grid. There was a hearing and one in front of MPs, I think, or maybe peers even, a couple of months back, where Ed Miliband and his chief advisor for net zero, Chris Stark, were in front of you know, a committee in Parliament, and they were asked about, you know, where are these data centres going to be, and they were saying, well, you're going to have to position them very close to the grid because, of course, they use a huge amount of energy. Yes. And therefore, but if you're an Elon Musk type character and you're thinking about investing in this country, you're not going to be told by Ed Miliband where you're going to put the data centre. You're going to put it where you want to put it, where you can get the support for it. And that's why they've got this, you know, there's this view now that actually when it comes to these data centres which use a huge amount of energy, the best way to do it is with nuclear power. These small reactors, you put them very close to them, and then you can get you're not using carbon, you're not burning carbon, but at the same time you've got the energy they need.
But there is a suggestion that the nuclear element of this will actually be providing more of the energy than the solar
because
panels.
The problem that the government has got, right, is there's this window, there's this gap where they're implementing these very strict targets, which is going to have a huge impact on industries, particularly in the northeast of England, where you're looking at drilling for, you know, we've already seen a suspension of no more licenses to explore for oil and gas in the North Sea, and you're going to have these. You know, you're going to have basically these jobs are just going to be taken out of the system because we're not going down that route. The government isn't going to prepare to go down that pathway. But at the same time, we're going to have these, you know, clean energy jobs. But, you know, Jürgen Meyer, who's of course the boss at GB Energy, said, well, they may not come online for 20 years, and so you're going to have this gap where actually there's no employment in really critical parts of the country for labour, where people, you know, want good skilled jobs. The other thing is, he talks about Ed Miliband in that clip you played there. He's talking about, you know, insulating homes, putting solar panels on roofs. I was speaking to the boss of LinkedIn at the end of last year, who was saying, when we look at our data sets, when we look at our algorithms of, you know, what sort of jobs are available, what people are applying for, what employers want, there's a real shortage in the economy right now of people who can insulate those walls. You know, there's been too much focus on, you know, university level jobs. We need to be training people up to go out there and
50% of homes.
Yeah.
Inside 15, 20 years.
But you need the men and women who can get on the roofs and fit the solar panels.
And also people who can build the houses in the first place, which is another point about Angela Rayner's dream of 1.5 million homes. What I did find interesting about, you know, when energy prices went up and Miliband blaming, you know, everything from dictators to fossil fuels.
It sort of leaves on the line argument.
Indeed, yeah, it feels a bit like that. But if in a year's time energy bills go down through other, you know, geopolitical reasons, Ukraine and goodness knows what else, then following Ed's own logic, that will be because the fossil fuel companies were able to bring them down. And I don't imagine him standing there and saying that.
We know the importance of world events in all of this. You know, we've potentially got Donald Trump now is meeting with Zelensky on Friday to sort out a deal with support for Ukraine, American support for Ukraine in return. Of course, America is going to get access to Ukrainian rare earths and, you know, mining rights. Keir Starmer's meeting with Trump tomorrow in Washington. We could have peace in Ukraine. Putin could be, you know, and this is quite difficult to predict because, you know, he's a dictator. But you could end up in a situation where actually there's this very you'd think a peace, and actually, you know, energy supply from Russia actually into Europe stabilises, and you see energy, the cost of energy come down, just as you saw back in 22 when we had the war, when we had Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, energy prices spiked up. But ultimately, what the promise that Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer made was that as a result, not of, putting fossil fuels and our reliance on fossil fuels to one side, that as a result of as a result of this net zero target, bills were going to come down by £300 a year.
Yep.
And that clearly isn't going to happen if you look at this latest report. In fact, on average, and this isn't just looking in the short term. It's no good saying, oh, well, it's going to be on the never, never. This is looking all the way out till 2050. Bills on average, household costs could go up by £150 a year in some cases.
Indeed. And if they do go down for whatever reason, then the government will claim the victory of that.
Yeah.
Your bills are down. We told you they would be down. Well, it can't have it both ways. It can't be because of bad energy pirates who drill for oil that increase them, and then when the same companies are still doing what they were doing yesterday, then say, this is down to something the Labour government did. So it's a massively confused picture.
But it might be that Keir Starmer ends up looking like a lucky general. If we do have peace in, if the peace is managed to be brokered, and that Russia, does manage to turn, we have a much freer flowing energy supply of Russian oil and gas coming into Europe. But there is inherently a danger with that, is that of course if we have that energy supply from Russia, Russia is going to get wealthier, Russia is going to get stronger. We're going to see potentially the lifting of sanctions. We know that Trump wants sanctions to be lifted against Russia, and we're going to potentially end up in a situation where actually, if Trump isn't willing to provide the security guarantees, then we're going to, and this is why Keir Starmer is spending more on defence, we're going to have not just Britain, but the rest of Europe as well, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has been making this point, significantly increase our spending, because at the moment, European NATO, that's taking out America, European NATO is 10 times richer than Russia. If we decide to spend the money on defence, we can well stand up to Putin by ourselves.
Yeah.
But if the sanctions are lifted, certainly from the American end, that's going to become more difficult, especially if Putin gets richer.
Indeed. Theo, stay with us. Theo Usherwood, political commentator.